Greatest common factor. Greatest common.
Oh, wait. Yes, greatest common factor. If you had something like this, of 18 and 24. Remember back in 5th, 6th, maybe even 7th grade, if you're finding greatest common factor, what did you do? Holly? No, list the factors. Otherwise we'd be doing multiples. Factors of 18 are 1 and 18. By the way, this is how you did it. 2, 3, and 6, right? Factors of 24 were 1 and 24, 2, 12, 3, 8, 4, 6. And then you just found the greatest one they had, which you probably already knew, which was?
6.
The biggest one they have in common?
6.
You knew that.
Yeah.
I didn't need to go into that. However, things become a little bit more complicated when you have something that looks like this. And I don't see a good example, so I'm just going to make one up. Say that 2 more times. What if you had 180 and I don't know.
79.
No, not 79.
80.
60.
133.
374.
Well, let's say 72. First of all, you don't really want to write down all the factors of 120 because there's probably a lot of them, and there's probably a lot of 72. What you want to do is follow these simple steps, if you have to, by the way. First thing is you need to prime factorize both numbers. And maybe you do or don't want to do that, but it doesn't matter. You will do it just to humor me. If you prime factorize 180, what do you get? How many different ways can we prime factorize? You can do the tree thing, or you can do the
Division.
Do the tree.
I'm going to do the division by primes just because everybody said like that. 2 goes into 180 90 times. 2 goes into 90 45 times. 5 goes into that 9 times, and then 3 and 3. So 180 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 5. Correct? Say yes.
Yes.
72, if you break it down, is 36 times 2, and 36 is 9 times 4, and 9 is 3 times 3 times 2 times 2. Not spending as much time on the prime factorization because I think you know how to do that. And this will make more sense in a second here. After you prime factorize them, what's that? What you need to do is look at both groups. Look at both groups and take all factors they have in common. But you can only do it one for one. Which simply means this. This one has 2 2s and that has 3 2s, so they have 2 2s in common. You with me? That's what they have in common. This one has 2 3s, this one has 2 3s, so they have 2 3s in common. They don't both have 5, so that's all they have in common. And then step 3 is to remultiply. And when you remultiply that, you get 4 times 9, which is 36. And that is your least, or your greatest common factor. Sorry. Cool. That really had nothing to do with what we're doing for today. No, it did. It did, because this is really what today looks like. It's going to be the same thing except for the letters. And I will show you the long, drawn-out way, which you'll say, I can do this faster and easier, and I'll say that's fine, but you really need to understand what you're doing when you do it faster and easier. So here's the question. You have this. 8
Is this under GCF?
C, yes, the same thing. C to the fourth, D to the second E minus, don't start yawning on me. D to the fourth, E squared. And the question is to find the greatest common factor. Again, I will do this the complete, long, drawn-out way. A good number of you will say, I don't need to do that because I understand the quicker way to do it. Some of you won't, and you'll have to do it this way for the rest of your life. That's just the way it works.
How are we gonna answer that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
seriously.
I don't. Tests.
Once again.
Oh.
So, take, yeah, your text. Take a look and see, following the same rules, number one, prime factorize, but watch how fast this goes, because you don't really have to do the tree thing for this, because what times what gives you 8? It's 2 times 2 times 2. What times what gives you C to the fourth? Well, C times C times C times C. D squared is D times D, and you have an E. That's all the prime factors of that. Prime factors of 12, right? C to the fourth is C times C times C. D to the second is D times D. C. 12 is 2 times 6, which is 2 times 3. And then I have C times C times C. And then I have D times D times D times D. And then I have E times E. Those are all my prime factors of that one. You with me? Now following the rule is, number 2 was, just pick the group, pick what they have in common.
Oh,
Well, what do they have in common? They both have 2 2s, right?
E2?
No, they don't have E2.
Only
How many C's do they have in common? This one has 3, this one has 4. They only have 3 in common,
3 C's?
right? How many D's do they have in common? This has 2, that has 4, 2. And how many E's do they have in common? Just 1. So your greatest common factor is 2 times 2, which is 4. C to the third, D to the second, E. Now, for those of you that are thinking mathematical thinking people, you just have to think this. First of all, the number part's pretty easy. What's the greatest common factor of 8 and 12? That should be obvious to you. 4. Then you just look at the letters and you take the group that has the fewest of what they have in common. This had 4, this had 3, so I took 3. This had 2, this had 4, so I took 2. This had 1, that had 2, so I take 1, because that's all they have in common.
Okay.
Later on, when we do least common multiple, you actually take the group that has the most. But this is least greatest common factor, so you take the group that has least. So do you see the quickest? Do you see the quickness in this? This is greatest common factor. We do a thing called least common multiple. Let me give you one, and we'll check to see if you understood. You ready, Sam?
Yep, ready to go.
5p squared q to the 5th r squared minus 10p q squared r squared. Jot me down what you feel the greatest common factor
Wait, is that-
is
Is
of
that
that.
a Q squared?
Q, Q, P, Q, R, P, Q, R. You have an answer, Sam?
Dude, when we do when it up there, it's at the 5p whatever. After the first one, it's minus. Goes to use a
No,
negative.
you're only looking for the common factor.
Okay.
Eventually we'll factor it out. Oh, we do factor it out. That is our next step,
What
sorry.
if we plus it? If we
I don't know what that means.
Can I say my answer? What if we add it?
You can't add it. I don't know what you're talking about. You can't add it.
No, what if the equation is 5p squared q to the 5th r to the second
He said I
plus 10pq squared r to the third.
That's a great question.
Alright.
Alright, don't lose me now. What I just asked you to do right now is to find, pay attention, find the greatest common factor. I just asked you to give me the greatest common factor, which Holly says is
5pq squared r squared. It's p squared, right?
no. Take
Yeah.
the group that has the fewest of them, that would be this one, has only one p, so p squared. Okay? Ask questions now if you don't understand why. The greatest common factor of 5 and 10 is 5. The group that had the fewest p's was this one. The group that had the fewest q's was this one, pq. They both had r squared, so that's their common factor there. Now, look up here.
I'm looking, sir.
This was find the greatest common factor.
Good job.
We're moving on to say to factor the greatest common factor. Just hold on. Which means this. Just like back in the day when you had this, 3x minus 6 and you factored out a 3, and you ended up with x minus 2, reverse distributive property. That is the same thing you're going to be asked to do with this. You found the greatest common factor. Now you're going to remove that greatest common factor from both of those and see what you're left with.
Nothing bolts for it.
So here's what it would look like in my limited space there. What times this gives you this? Well, I have the 5. I have a p, but I need a p squared, so I'm missing a p. I have a q squared, but I need a q to the 5th, so it's q to the 3rd. I already have the r squared, so that's all that I'm missing out of the first term. For the second term, to go from 5 to 10, I have to multiply by 2. The p is already there, the q is squared is already there, and the r squared is already there. This is taking the greatest common factor and factoring it out. And this is the answer to that. This was finding the greatest common factor. This is factoring the greatest common factor.
Well, how you get the Q?
Caroline,
So you just find what to multiply from what you
what
have,
times this will give you this?
just the first
Or
one?
it's the same thing as saying this divided by this. Either way, it's the same thing. So I already have 5. I have a p, but I need a p squared, so that's where the 1q came from. I have a q squared, but I need a q to the 5th, so that's where the q to the 3rd came from. I already have the r squared, so I don't need that. 5 times 2 is 10. I already have the rest of this was already there. Reverse distributive property. Charles.
Why'd you listen to
Wait, were you just listening to what I told Caroline?
Yeah.
I am taking this out of this. See, I have 2p squared, so I took 1p out, I'm left with a p. I had q to the 5th, took 2 of them out, so I have q to the 3rd.
Oh.
Same thing over there. Ready for a big one, Sam. They do this in Texas. 5th graders are doing this in Texas.
Yeah.
Morgan?
You better step up your game.
So to do the factoring, first you have to find the greatest, like you have to do the.
You have to
whole-
find the greatest common factor in order to factor it, yes.
Oh, that was a dumb question.
So let me show you, doing the math. Let's say you've got this. Making this one off the top of my head. 15 x squared y to the 3rd z minus 20 x y to the 5th z squared minus plus Morgan 10 x cubed y z. And I'm asking you to factor the greatest common factor.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, make my brain hurt.
Too many
Proceed.
letters, too many numbers.
Oh.
It's not as hard as one might think.
Yeah, it is.
It becomes a lot easier when you realize your homework could be on the line, depending on how you react.
Oh.
Oh,
I'm
It's
so
getting,
happy.
it's getting more clear now, isn't it, Ashley?
This is why I'm never making the test.
And it's making all the sounds.
Oh.
Say
I know.
zeros.
I know, I'm gonna.
Oh, wait, oh, but it's negative.
Doesn't matter. Minus and the pluses are just the signs you put in the parentheses.
Oh, yeah.
You did, Charles. They're all z's. Z squared, z.
Okay.
Oh. I got that right. Oh, actually,
If you're looking at your greatest common factor, out of 15, 20, and 10, the biggest you need to take out is a 5. Out of x squared, x, and x cubed, the biggest thing you take out of all three of them is an x. Take the group that has the fewest of them. Y cubed, y to the 5th y, biggest thing you can take out is a y. Z squared, z, biggest thing you can take out is a z. Greatest common factor. Okay. You're now going to put a parenthesis. You're going to have a minus sign here between these two and a plus sign there between those two. And then you just say either what times that'll give me that or divided by what gives me that. What times 5 gives me 15? 3. X to x squared, you need an x. Y to y cubed, you need a y squared. Already have the z, don't need to add anything more there. Minus 5 to 20, 4. X is already there. Y to y to the 5th. Z to z squared. Plus what times 5 gives you that? 2. X times what gives you x cubed?
X cubed.
X squared. Already got the y, z, already got the y, z.
Yeah.
I got that right.
oh, listen, I got great.
Yeah, 5th grade advanced.
Yeah.
Fifth grade.
Oh my god.
Sam.
Notice they never use O as a variable. That's probably a good idea.
Because it always says 0.
They shouldn't use 5, or I mean, that's
That add to the what?
I'm to the what?
Oh my
gosh. What is even the point?
Factor. Fact.
Okay, hold on.
Factor. Notice I didn't say give the greatest common factor. That would just be finding the greatest common factor. But it said factor.
Have you ever used problems like this besides it?
I have on a daily basis.
like when
A
you
number of
find out.
times I have factored the greatest common factor. People in Texas do not ask that question. They just do their work.
Wait, it doesn't work.
What questions don't
It
they ask?
doesn't work out. Okay,
Oh,
not
it
work
won't
out.
work in everything.
This isn't a working out problem. I mean,
Everything works out.
if you can't factor anything out, it's unfactorable, I guess, but
But how do you go from done to 15?
it's a legitimate question, kids. We've got a question on the floor. How do you go from 12 to 15?
You multiply it.
You can use 12 and put a 14. Come on, Morgan.
Is it M?
It's a mess.
Oh,
come on.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. Guess what?
I love it.
That's what I thought, but then okay, alright.
Oh,
Your greatest common factor should have been this, 2 m to the 12th,
I have.
Got it.
Yes.
times n to the 8th, p to the 2nd,
Or
in parentheses then, 2 times what is 8? 4. Morgan, why don't you field this one? M to the 12th, M to the 15th, I need
3.
M to the 3rd.
Yes, to the fifth.
And 8, and 13, and to the 5.
I got it. I was
Yes.
I got it.
And 8.
Yeah.